"Mom, get in the car. I'm going to take you for a drive." Ted's words sounded so normal, so innocent. It was a cold Sunday afternoon, and I had just told him for the umpteenth time that I was not going to transfer my house into his name. "No, son. This house is mine, and it will remain mine until the day I die." I had been firm, definitive. For the first time in years, I had said no to my own son. My voice had come out stronger than I expected, loaded with 30 years of sacrifices and tears. Ted had been quiet for a few minutes, pacing back and forth in the living room like a caged animal. His footsteps echoed on the hardwood floor that I had waxed that very morning, just as I did every Sunday since my husband passed away 5 years ago. I could see him clenching and unclenching his fists, his jaw tightening with every step. Then, suddenly, his face changed completely. That strange smile appeared on his lips, the same one that gave me chills ever since he was a little boy and would break my favorite vases. "Okay, Mom, you're right. Forgive me for being so pushy." His words struck me like a lightning bolt from a clear sky. Ted never apologized. He never gave in so easily. In his 40 years of life, I could count on one hand the number of times I'd heard him admit a mistake. "Really?" I asked, unable to heed my suspicion. Something in his posture, in the way he avoided looking me directly in the eye, made me nervous. It was as if he were acting, playing a part he had rehearsed in his mind. "Of course. But look, we haven't gone out together in a long time. What do you say we go for a drive? We can grab a coffee, talk like we used to, like a normal mother and son." He approached the sofa where I was sitting, his movements too calculated, too smooth to be natural. There was something in his tone I didn't like, but I also felt a small hope blooming in my chest like a timid flower. Maybe my son had finally understood. Maybe we could fix our relationship after so many months of constant fighting over the house, after so many arguments that ended with slammed doors and weeks of not speaking. "I don't know, Ted. It's late and it's cold." I glanced out the living room window. The sky was a leaden gray and threatened rain. The clouds moved quickly, as if they were in a hurry to get somewhere important. "That's exactly why, Mom. A short drive will do us both good. I promise we won't talk about the house anymore. I just want to spend time with you, like when I was a kid and you'd take me to the park on Sundays." He moved closer and took my wrinkled hand with that feigned softness I knew so well. "Please." His eyes pleaded with me, but there was something else behind that look. Something cold and calculating that I couldn't quite decipher, but that made me feel uneasy, like when I was a child and sensed something bad was about to happen. Still, he was my son, my only son. The baby I had held in my arms for entire nights when he had a fever, the boy I had comforted during his nightmares of imaginary monsters, the child I had defended when he got into trouble at school because other kids made fun of his patched-up clothes. All right, but just for a little while. I didn't know why I agreed. Maybe because deep down in my heart, I still hoped that the loving Ted from long ago would reappear. The one who would bring me wildflowers from the field and tell me I was the most beautiful mom in the world. I put on the brown coat that had belonged to my late husband. It still held his scent of tobacco and cheap cologne, an aroma that comforted me on lonely nights. I grabbed my black purse, the same one I took to church every Sunday, and checked to make sure I had my wallet with the few dollars I had left until my next pension check. Ted was waiting for me by the door with the car keys in his hand, smiling as if he'd won the lottery. There was something disturbing about that sudden joy, as if he knew something I didn't. "Where are we going?" I asked as we walked toward his old, rusty sedan. The cold wind hit my face and made me shiver. "It's a surprise, Mom. Trust me." His words sounded sweet, but there was a strange echo to them, as if he had said them many times before. Those words should have been a screaming alarm. I should have gone back into the house right then, locked the door, and called my neighbor Carol, but I didn't. I got into the car like a lamb to the slaughter, blindly trusting my own flesh and blood. Ted started the engine with difficulty. The car coughed several times before finally turning over. We started to drive away from my neighborhood, from my little house with the green shutters and the small garden, from everything I knew and loved. The familiar streets disappeared out the window as we entered areas I didn't recognize. "Are you sure you know where you're going?" I asked when we had been driving for over half an hour on increasingly lonely roads. "Of course, Mom. Just relax and enjoy the scenery." His voice sounded different now, harder, colder. But there was no scenery to enjoy. Just empty highways, trees with bare branches like skeletons against the gray sky, and a silence that grew denser with every mile. My stomach began to clench with a feeling I hadn't had in years. Fear. Pure, primal fear, like the kind I felt as a little girl when my father would come home drunk. When Ted finally stopped the car, in the middle of a desolate county road, surrounded by nothing but empty fields and a deathly silence, I knew I had made the biggest mistake of my life. "Get out of the car, Mom." Ted's voice had changed completely. There was no longer any trace of the feigned sweetness from an hour ago. Now it sounded cold, metallic, like a stranger's voice. "What?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What are you talking about, son? Why did we stop here?" I looked around with growing horror. We were in the middle of nowhere. The road stretched in both directions like a black snake, without a single light in sight. On either side, only empty fields that disappeared into the falling darkness. The wind whistled through the dry grass with a sound that chilled me to the bone. "I told you to get out of the car." Ted turned to me, and for the first time in my life, I didn't recognize my own son. His eyes were hard as stones. His mouth was a straight, emotionless line. "Now, Ted, please, I don't understand. What's happening? Why are you talking to me like this?" My voice came out broken, trembling. I felt like I was living a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. "You know what? I'm tired of your tantrums, Mom. I'm tired of begging and pleading with you to be reasonable. That house should be mine by right. I'm your only heir. I'm the one who's going to take care of you when you're a useless old woman." Each word was like a slap in the face. "But son, I'm not a burden to you. I take care of myself. I pay my own bills. Tears began to stream down my cheeks as I tried to find the words that might bring my little boy back. "Shut up!" He screamed so loudly I cringed in my seat as if he'd hit me. "Just shut up. I'm sick of listening to you. I'm sick of you being so selfish and stubborn." He got out of the car with a slam of the door that echoed in the silence like a gunshot. He walked around to my side of the vehicle and yanked my door open violently. "Get out right now, or I'll drag you out." His hand reached for me, and for a moment I thought he was going to strike me. I had never seen that expression on my son's face. It was as if a demon had taken possession of him. "Ted, please, think about what you're doing. I'm your mother. I gave you life. I raised you. I nursed you. I cared for you when you were sick." My voice broke completely. "I love you, son. Why are you doing this to me? Because you're a stubborn old woman who doesn't listen to reason. Because you'd rather hold on to a house you won't be able to maintain instead of giving it to your own son." He grabbed my arm with force and pulled me out of the car. I fell to my knees on the cold gravel of the roadside. My 65-year-old legs couldn't support me. The pain in my knees was immediate and sharp, but the pain in my heart was 1,000 times worse. "Ted, please, don't leave me here." I crawled toward him, clinging to the cuff of his pants like a beggar. "It's cold. I don't have any money to get back. My phone is at home. You should have thought of that before being so selfish." He shook my hand off as if I were an annoying insect. "Maybe this will teach you to appreciate what you have. Maybe this will make you understand that you need your family. I do need you. I've always needed you. But my house is the only thing I have left from your father," I cried out in desperation. "It's the only thing that gives me security in this world." "Well, now you're going to learn what it feels like to have no security." He got back in the car and started the engine. "When you're ready to be reasonable, you can call me. If you can find a phone." "No, Ted, no. Please, don't abandon me here." I ran after the car as it began to pull away, but my old legs couldn't keep up. "I'm your mother, your own mother." The taillights of the car grew smaller until they disappeared completely into the darkness. The sound of the engine faded until there was only the most absolute silence I had ever experienced in my life. I stood in the middle of the road, trembling from cold and shock. The night wind cut through my coat as if it were paper. My knees were bleeding where I had fallen on the gravel. My hands were shaking so violently I couldn't control them. "My God, what am I going to do?" I whispered to the wind. "How did I get here?" The reality began to hit me like hammer blows. I was alone, in the middle of nowhere, with no money, no phone, and no way to call for help. My own son, the person I trusted most in the world, had abandoned me like a stray dog. I began to walk down the road, not knowing where I was going. Every step was agony. My shoes weren't made for walking long distances, and soon my feet began to ache. The cold seeped into my old bones, making my teeth chatter. Someone will pass by, I told myself. Someone will help me. I can't die out here. But minutes passed, and not a single car appeared. The road was completely deserted. Just me, the darkness, and the sound of my own footsteps on the asphalt. I thought of my house, of my warm bed, of the cup of tea I used to drink before sleep. I thought of the pictures of my husband I kept on the nightstand, of the small garden where I grew tomatoes and herbs. I thought of everything I had lost in a single afternoon. But more than anything, I thought of Ted, of the baby he had been, so sweet and loving, of the little boy who would run to hug me when I came home from work, of the teenager who defended me when the neighbors criticized how I was raising him alone after his father died. When had he turned into this monster? When had he stopped being my son and become my enemy? The tears froze on my cheeks as I kept walking. Each step was an act of faith, a hope that someone, somewhere, would take pity on an old woman abandoned in the middle of nowhere. I didn't know that night would be the beginning of my transformation. I didn't know that Ted's abandonment would give me the strength I had lost years ago. I didn't know that when I finally returned to my home, I would no longer be the same submissive, fearful woman I was before. But all of that was yet to come. For now, I was just an old woman lost in the darkness, betrayed by the person I loved most in the world, walking toward an uncertain future with nothing but her dignity intact. The wind kept blowing, but something inside me began to shift. Something small but powerful, like a seed germinating in the hardest soil. I had been walking for more than 2 hours when I saw the first lights in the distance. My feet were mangled inside my shoes, my lips were chapped from the cold, and every breath hurt in my chest like daggers of ice. But those yellow lights in the distance gave me the first real hope of the night. It was a small, old gas station, the kind that looked like it had been built decades ago and forgotten by time. A flickering sign with uneven letters announced it was open 24 hours. I had never seen anything so beautiful in my life. I limped inside, and the warmth of the interior hit me like a blessing. Behind the counter was a young man, maybe Ted's age, who looked at me with immediate surprise and concern. "Ma'am, are you all right? What happened to you?" He quickly got up from his chair and helped me into a plastic seat next to the counter. "My son," I began, but my voice broke. "My son left me on the highway. I don't have money for a taxi. I don't have a phone. Please, could you call someone for me?" The young man looked at me with a mixture of horror and disbelief. "Your own son abandoned you in the middle of nowhere? What kind of animal does that?" His words made me cry again. It was the first time all night that someone had acknowledged the monstrosity of what had happened. It was the first time someone made me feel like I wasn't crazy, that what Ted had done was truly terrible. "What's your name, ma'am?" he asked gently, bringing me a cup of hot water. "Rose. Rose Miller. I live in the Maple Creek neighborhood, but I don't know how to get there from here." "Don't you worry, Miss Rose. We'll figure it out. Do you have a neighbor or a friend who could come get you?" I immediately thought of Carol, my next-door neighbor. Carol, who always asked how I was doing, who brought me a portion of her Sunday roast, who had warned me several times that Ted didn't treat me right. Yes, my neighbor Carol. But I don't know her number by heart. "Do you know her last name? We can look her up in the directory." "Johnson. Carol Johnson. She lives in the house right next to mine." The young man called information and, after several tries, managed to get the number. When I heard Carol's sleepy voice on the other end of the line, I started crying again. "Carol, it's Rose, your neighbor." "Rose? What's wrong, honey? It's 11 o'clock at night. Ted abandoned me on a highway. I'm at a gas station, and I don't know how to get home." The silence on the other end was so long I thought the call had been disconnected. Finally, I heard Carol's voice, but now it was wide awake and furious. "That bastard did what? Give me the exact address of where you are. I'm on my way immediately." I passed the phone to the young man so he could give her the directions. While I waited, he brought me a blanket and a hot coffee. He refused to let me pay. "No, ma'am, this is on the house. What was done to you is an outrage." Carol arrived exactly 1 hour later, driving her beat-up old pickup truck like a race car driver. She stormed into the gas station like a hurricane, her hair disheveled and her eyes spitting fire. "Rose! Oh, my lord, just look at what that scoundrel did to you." She hugged me so tightly I thought she might break me, but it was the most comforting hug I had received in years. "Carol, you have no idea what happened. You don't know what he did to me." "Oh, yes, I do, honey. I know exactly what he did because I saw him." Her words sent a chill down my spine. "What do you mean you saw him?" "When he got back to your house, I was watering my plants in the yard. I saw him arrive alone, and since you two had left together 2 hours earlier, I thought it was strange. Then I saw him go into your house with keys." "He went into my house? How does he have keys to my house?" That's what I asked myself, so I kept watching from my window. Carol helped me into her truck as she told me the story. "Rose, that boy was inside your house for over an hour, turning everything upside down. I saw him carry out a box full of papers." My blood turned to ice. "What papers? What was he looking for?" "I don't know. But when he came out, he looked very pleased with himself, like he'd found what he was looking for." Carol drove fast but steady through the empty streets. "Rose, I have to tell you something I've been thinking for months." "What is it?" "Your son is not right. The way he treats you, the way he talks to you, the way he demands things, that isn't a son's love. That's pure manipulation." Her words confirmed what I had begun to suspect but had never dared to admit. Ted didn't love me. Maybe he never really had. He just saw me as an obstacle between him and what he believed was his. "Do you think he planned all of this? That he knew from the beginning he was going to abandon me?" "Rose, honey, I'm sure of it. Nobody takes their mother for a drive at 8 o'clock at night on deserted highways. That's planned. That's thought out." We arrived at my house, and my heart sank when I saw all the lights were off. But there was something worse. The front door was ajar. "Don't go in alone," Carol said. "We'll go together." We turned on the lights, and what I saw shattered my soul. My house had been ransacked. Drawers were pulled out, papers were scattered across the floor, the sofa cushions were overturned. Someone had been looking for something specific. "He took the house documents," I whispered after checking the drawer where I kept my important papers. "He took the deed, the mortgage payment receipts, everything." Carol sat next to me on the ruined sofa and took my hands. "Rose, listen to me carefully. What happened tonight wasn't just your son having a tantrum. This was a plan. He got you out of the house so he could come in freely and steal your documents." "But why? What can he do with those papers?" "He can try to sell the house. He can forge your signature. He can do a lot of terrible things." Carol looked me directly in the eye. "But we are going to stop him." "How?" "He has everything. He has my documents. He's probably already copied my ID. He knows all my information. Because we're going to be smarter than him. First thing tomorrow, we're going to the county recorder's office. We're going to put a fraud alert on your property so that nobody can do anything without you being physically present. We're going to change the locks. And we are going to prove that your son is a thief." For the first time all night, I felt something like hope. I wasn't alone. I had an ally. I had someone who believed me, who defended me, who was willing to fight for me. "Why are you doing this for me, Carol? Why do you care so much?" "Because you're a good woman, Rose. Because you don't deserve what's happening to you. And because I also had a son who treated me badly." Her eyes filled with tears. "The difference is, I didn't have anyone to defend me. But you have me." That night, I slept at Carol's house, on her sofa, under blankets that smelled of fabric softener and kindness. For the first time in months, I slept deeply, without fear, knowing that someone was looking out for me. I didn't know that the next day, the war would begin. I didn't know that Ted would underestimate the power of two determined women. I didn't know that my life was about to change forever. But that night, for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. I woke at dawn with the sun filtering through Carol's floral curtains. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was, until the pain in my feet and the memory of the previous night hit me like a cold slap. I sat up on the sofa and saw Carol in the kitchen, already dressed and making coffee. "Good morning, warrior," she said with a smile that couldn't quite hide the worry in her eyes. "How are you feeling?" Like I've been hit by a truck, I admitted, touching my knees that still ached from the fall on the road. But alive, that's what's important. That's more than important, Rose. That's a miracle. She poured me a steaming cup of coffee and sat across from me. Now we have to act fast. Ted isn't going to sit back and do nothing. She was right. I knew my son well enough to know that last night was just the first move in his game. If he had stolen my documents, it was because he had a specific plan to use them. What do you suggest we do first? First, we go to your house and make a complete inventory of what he took. Then we go to the county clerk's office to protect your property. After that, we need to find a lawyer to help us. Carol spoke with the precision of a general planning a battle. We returned to my house when the sun was already high. In the daylight, the mess looked even worse. Ted had rummaged through every drawer, every closet, every corner where I might have kept important papers. He took the original deed to the house, I confirmed after checking my small safe. Also my spare ID, the copies of the mortgage payment receipts, and even your father's life insurance papers. I had everything here. Carol let out a low whistle. With those documents, he can pretend to be your legal representative in a lot of places. She was taking pictures of the mess with her phone when we heard the sound of a car approaching. I peered out the window and my heart stopped. It was Ted, and he wasn't alone. A blonde woman I didn't recognize was getting out of the passenger seat. He's here, I whispered to Carol. And he brought someone. Perfect. Let's confront him right now, with witnesses. Ted walked through the front door as if he owned the place. Seeing me, his expression shifted from surprise to pure irritation. You're back already? I thought you'd learned your lesson. The only lesson I learned is that my son is a thief, I replied with a firmness that surprised me. Give me back my documents. What documents? I don't know what you're talking about. His lie was so brazen that even the blonde woman looked uncomfortable. The documents you stole last night while I was lost on the road where you abandoned me. My voice grew stronger with each word. Carol saw you come in here and take a box full of papers. Ted looked at Carol with pure hatred. This nosy old busybody has no business here. This is a family conversation. Not when the family is committing crimes. Carol intervened, unfazed. Rose, introduce me to your guest. The blonde woman stepped forward with a fake smile. I'm Vanessa, Ted's girlfriend. He told me about the situation with the house. What situation? I asked. This is my house. There is no situation. Well, according to Ted, you're starting to have memory problems, and he's worried about your well-being. Vanessa spoke in that honeyed voice that manipulative people use. Maybe it would be better if the house were in someone younger's name. The rage I felt in that moment was like a volcano erupting inside my chest. Memory problems? I remember perfectly every cent I paid for this house. I remember every sacrifice I made to keep it. And I remember very well how my own son abandoned me last night in the middle of nowhere. Mom, don't be dramatic. We just went for a drive and you decided to get out of the car. Ted's lie was so absurd that Carol let out a humorless laugh. Seriously? That's your version? Carol walked right up to him until they were face to face. Because I saw you come back alone, enter this house with keys you shouldn't have, and leave with a box of documents that don't belong to you. You didn't see anything. And even if you did, you can't prove it. Oh, no? Carol pulled out her cell phone and started playing a video. Look at this, Rose. On the screen, Ted was clearly visible entering my house last night, coming out with a box, and putting it in his car. The quality was surprisingly good for being recorded at night. How? Ted turned visibly pale. I have security cameras. Genius. And they're connected to my phone. Carol smiled with satisfaction. Everything you did last night was recorded. Vanessa and Ted exchanged nervous glances. It was obvious they hadn't counted on real evidence of their actions. That doesn't mean anything, Ted mumbled, but his voice had lost all its arrogance. I have a right to be in my mother's house. You don't have the right to steal documents, I interjected. And you definitely don't have the right to abandon your mother on a deserted road. Look, Mom, we can fix this easily. Ted switched tactics, returning to his manipulative tone. Just transfer the house to my name, and we'll all be happy. You can keep living here, but I'll take care of all the legal and financial problems. So you can kick me out whenever you feel like it? So you can abandon me on another highway if I don't do what you want? I stepped toward him until I was very close. Ted, I'm going to tell you something one time. This house is mine, and it's going to stay mine until the day I die. And if you try to steal it or forge my signature, I will put you in jail. You can't prove anything. I can prove you stole my documents. I can prove you abandoned me, and I can prove you entered my house without permission. I felt a new strength coursing through my veins, as if all the years of submission were evaporating. And if that's not enough, we're going to investigate what else you've been doing with my money. What do you mean by that? For the first time, Ted looked genuinely nervous. I mean, I'm going to review every dollar you've borrowed from me in recent years. Every emergency you needed money for. Every time I paid off your debts because you cried about not having a job. My voice grew louder with each accusation. We're going to see if you really had emergencies, or if you were just stealing from me, little by little. Vanessa tugged on Ted's arm. Maybe we should go and talk about this later. Yes, get out, Carol said, but first, give back the documents. I don't have any documents, Ted insisted, but he was already backing toward the door. Then you won't mind if we go to the police, I replied. If you have nothing to hide, there's no problem. Ted and Vanessa left the house without another word, but their faces made it clear this wasn't over. I watched them drive away as Carol and I stood in the doorway. Do you really think we can stop him? I asked my neighbor. Rose, that boy just committed several felonies. Theft, endangerment, and probably fraud. Of course we can stop him. She put a hand on my shoulder. But we have to be smart and act fast. What do you suggest? First, we go to the county clerk's office right now, then to the police to file a report, and then we find a lawyer to help us recover your documents and protect your house. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my own life. I was no longer the helpless widow who let her son manipulate her. I was a woman who was going to fight for what was hers. Let's go, I said to Carol. We have work to do. I didn't know that Ted had already started to execute his plan. I didn't know that while we were talking about going to the county office, he was already on his way there with forged documents. I didn't know that the real battle was just beginning. But for the first time in a long time, I felt ready for anything that came my way. The county recorder's office was a gray, ugly building that seemed designed to discourage people. Carol and I stood in an endless line of people, carrying folders full of documents and wearing expressions of frustration. Are you sure this is going to work? I asked Carol as we slowly inched toward the window. Absolutely. Once you put the alert on your property, Ted won't be able to do a thing without you being present. Carol checked the papers we had brought for the 5th time. The important thing is that we get here before he does. When it was finally our turn, the clerk behind the glass looked at us with the weariness of someone who has seen too many family tragedies. Good morning. How can I help you? I need to place a security alert on my property, I explained, handing him my ID and the copies of documents we had found in my personal files. I believe someone is going to try to forge my signature. The clerk, whose name was Frank according to his name tag, reviewed my papers with professional attention. Do you have any evidence that someone is attempting to commit fraud? My son stole the original documents from my house last night. We have a video of him entering my house and leaving with a box of papers. Carol showed him the video on her phone. Frank frowned as he watched the footage. This is very serious, ma'am. Have you filed a police report yet? We're going to do that after this, I replied. But we want to protect the property first. Very well. I'm going to put an immediate alert on your file. This means that any transaction related to your property will require your physical presence, with official identification and 2 witnesses. Frank began typing on his computer. What is the exact address of the property? I gave him all the information, and he continued working in silence for several minutes. Suddenly, his expression changed completely. Mrs. Miller, I have to tell you something very serious. My stomach dropped. What's wrong? Someone has already been here this morning trying to process a transaction on your property. What? Carol and I shouted at the same time. A young man came in 2 hours ago with documents he claimed were yours. He wanted to start the property transfer process. Frank reviewed his screen, scowling. Luckily, One of my colleagues noticed that something wasn't right with the documents and asked him to come back with more paperwork. What wasn't right? I asked, my heart beating so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. The signature didn't exactly match the one we have on file. Also, some required seals and notarizations were missing. Frank looked at me seriously. Ma'am, your son tried to forge your signature to steal your house. The world seemed to stop around me. It was one thing to suspect Ted was capable of something like this, but it was something else entirely to hear the official confirmation. Did he say when he would be back? Carol asked. He said he would return tomorrow with the corrected documents, Frank continued typing. But with the alert I'm placing now, even if he brings perfect documents, he won't be able to do anything without Mrs. Miller being present. What if he brings someone pretending to be me? That's why we require official photo identification. And I'm now adding a special note to your file with your current photograph so that any employee can verify your identity. He took a picture of me with a digital camera and attached it to my file. For the first time all day, I started to feel like we might actually win this battle. Is there anything else we can do to protect me? I asked. Yes. I recommend you go immediately to a notary public and make an official declaration revoking any power you may have given your son over your properties. You should also consider making a new will to ensure your assets go to whom you truly want. We left the recorder's office with a bittersweet feeling. On one hand, we had protected my property. On the other, the reality of what Ted had tried to do was hitting me like waves against a rock. I can't believe my own son would go this far, I murmured as we walked to Carol's car. Rose, listen to me, Carol said, stopping and taking me by the shoulders. What we just discovered changes everything. Your son didn't just abandon you last night out of anger. He planned all of this. He got you out of the house so he could steal your documents, and then came here to try to steal your property. But why? Does he hate me that much? It's not about hate, honey. It's about pure greed. Your house is worth money, and he wants it. Carol helped me into the car, but it doesn't matter why he did it anymore. What matters is that we're going to stop him. We went directly to the nearest police station. It was a small building that smelled of old coffee and disinfectant. The officer who helped us was named Davies, and he seemed genuinely interested in our case. Let me see if I understand this correctly, Officer Davies said, after hearing the whole story. Your son abandoned you on a deserted road, stole documents from your house, and then tried to forge your signature to steal your property. That's right. Exactly. And we have video of the theft. Carol showed him the recordings on her phone. Davies reviewed the video several times, taking notes in a notebook. This constitutes several crimes: reckless endangerment, theft, attempted fraud, and possibly others. Do you want to press formal charges? The question paralyzed me. It was one thing to be angry with Ted, but another to put him in jail. He was my son, after all. My own flesh and blood. Mrs. Miller, Davies said gently, noticing my hesitation. I understand this is difficult, because he's your son. But think about this. If he succeeds in stealing your house, where will you live? And if he does it once and gets away with it, what's to stop him from doing it again? Besides, Carol added, it's not just about punishing him. It's about protecting yourself. If you press charges, he'll know he can't keep abusing you. I thought about the night before, walking alone on that dark road, feeling like I was going to freeze to death. I thought about my ransacked house, my stolen documents, the look of satisfaction on Ted's face as he walked out with the box of papers. Yes, I said finally, I want to press charges. Davies smiled in approval. Very well. Let's do this step by step. The process of filing the report took over 2 hours. I had to tell the full story 3 times, sign several documents, and provide every detail I could remember. Carol provided the video and her witness testimony. What happens now? I asked when we were done. We'll investigate and likely issue a warrant for his arrest, Davies explained. With the evidence you have, it's very probable that we can prosecute your son for several serious felonies. When we left the police station, the sun was already setting. It had been a long and emotionally exhausting day, but for the first time in months, I felt as if I had reclaimed some of my power. How are you feeling? Carol asked me as we drove back home. Terrified, I admitted, but also Liberated. Somehow. Like I've finally stopped being a victim. That's exactly what you did today, Rose. You stopped being a victim and became a fighter. When we got to my house, we found a surprise waiting for us on the front porch. It was a young woman, about 20 years old, who looked a lot like Ted, but with a much sweeter and more worried expression. "Grandma Rose?" she said when she saw us approach. "Carmen? What are you doing here, sweetie?" Carmen was Ted's daughter, but I hadn't seen her in years because he always made excuses for her not to visit. "Grandma, I need to talk to you. It's about Dad." Her eyes were filled with tears. "I think he's planning something terrible." Carol and I exchanged glances. Carmen had arrived just when we needed her most. "Come inside, my love," I said, hugging her tightly. "We have a lot to talk about." I didn't know that Carmen was going to be the key to completely unmasking Ted. I didn't know that my granddaughter had been watching her father for months and had discovered things that even I couldn't have imagined. But that night, for the first time in years, I was going to have someone from my own family on my side. Carmen sat on my sofa with trembling hands, as if she were about to confess the world's greatest sin. Carol made tea for the three of us while I waited for my granddaughter to find the words. "Grandma, I didn't know how to tell you this, but when I found out what happened last night, I knew I had to come." Carmen took a sip of tea and a deep breath. "Dad didn't just steal your documents. He's been stealing from you for years." "What do you mean, my love? Do you remember all the times he asked you for money for emergencies? For the hospital when I was supposedly sick? To pay off urgent debts? To fix his car?" Carmen took out her phone and showed me a series of photographs. "Grandma, I've never been sick. He's never had urgent debts. And he sold his car 6 months ago." The photographs showed Ted at casinos, at expensive bars, buying costly clothes, dining in luxurious restaurants. In one of the pictures, he was with Vanessa on what looked like an expensive beach vacation. "But he told me you needed surgery, medicine." My voice cracked as I understood the scale of my son's lies. "Never, Grandma. I'm perfectly healthy. In fact, I haven't seen Dad much in months because every time I try to visit you, he makes up excuses for us not to come." Carmen took my hand. "But yesterday, I overheard a phone conversation that terrified me." "What did you hear?" "He was talking to Vanessa about a plan to make you sign documents. He said he already had copies of everything and just needed your signature on some papers he had prepared." Carmen showed me more photos on her phone. "Look at this." The images showed documents spread out on a table, but it wasn't just any table. It was my own kitchen table, taken from the perspective of someone standing in the doorway. "When did you take these pictures?" 3 weeks ago, when I came to visit, and you weren't here. Dad was here with Vanessa, and when they saw me, they acted very strangely. Vanessa quickly hid some papers, and Dad told me they were just cleaning." Carmen zoomed in on one of the photos, but I managed to snap this picture before they noticed. In the image, property transfer documents were clearly visible, several with my supposed signature already filled in. "My God," Carol whispered. "He's been planning this for weeks." "There's more," Carmen continued. "After that visit, I started to get suspicious, so I began recording his phone conversations when he came to my apartment." "You recorded your own father?" "Yes, Grandma. Because I knew he was planning to hurt you, and you're the only family that really matters to me." Carmen connected her phone to a small portable speaker. "Listen to this." Ted's voice, cold and clear, came from the speaker. "The old woman is tougher than I thought, but I have everything ready. The documents are perfect. The signature is practically identical. I just need her out of the house for a few hours, so I can change the locks." Vanessa's voice responded, "What if she resists? What if she doesn't want to sign? She won't have a choice. Once I have control of the house, she'll have to do what I say, or she'll be on the street." Carol and I looked at each other in horror. The conversation continued. "But Ted, she's your mother. She's an obstacle, nothing more. That house is worth over $300,000. With that money, we can go live wherever we want and never have to deal with her again. And Carmen? Your daughter is going to wonder what happened to her grandmother. Carmen will understand. I'll tell her that Grandma got senile, and we had to put her in a home." Carmen stopped the recording, tears streaming down her cheeks. That's when I knew I had to do something. I was speechless. My own son not only planned to steal my house but also planned to abandon me completely and lie to his own daughter about my fate. Are there more recordings? Carol asked. Several, including one where he talks about faking medical documents to have her declared mentally incompetent. Carmen wiped her tears. Grandma, he doesn't see you as his mother. He sees you as a problem to be solved. The revelation hit me like a hammer. For years I had excused Ted's behavior, thinking he was just immature or selfish. I never imagined he was capable of such an elaborate and cruel betrayal. We have to take these recordings to the police, Carol said. I already thought of that, Carmen replied. But first I wanted to talk to you, Grandma, because there's something else you need to know. What else could there possibly be? Dad is in debt. A lot of debt. He owes money to dangerous people. Carmen showed me text messages on Ted's phone that she had managed to photograph. That's why he needs the money from your house so urgently. The messages were threatening and explicit. Ted owed over $30,000 to loan sharks who did not seem patient. How long have you known all this? I asked Carmen. I've been gathering evidence for months. But last night, when you didn't come home and then Carol called me asking about you, I knew Dad had done something terrible. Carmen hugged me tightly. Forgive me for not warning you sooner. I was afraid you wouldn't believe me. Carol called you? Yes, Carol explained. When we got back last night, I looked up Carmen's number in the directory. I thought maybe she knew something. And when she told me what had happened, I knew I had to bring you all the evidence I had collected. Carmen pulled a folder from her bag. Here are all the photos, recordings, and copies of documents I've been saving. We went through the folder together. The amount of evidence Carmen had managed to gather was astonishing. Photographs of Ted forging documents, recordings of his conversations with Vanessa, planning the theft, copies of his debts, threatening messages from loan sharks, and even receipts for luxury expenses paid with money that was supposedly for family emergencies. Carmen, this is enough to put him in prison for years, Carol said, reviewing the documents. I hope so, because honestly, I'm scared of him. Carmen lowered her voice. When he found out I knew something about his plans, he threatened me. He told me if I said anything to anyone, he would make sure I never saw my grandmother again. Your own father threatened you? Yes, and it wasn't an empty threat. The way he looked at me, it was like he was a dangerous stranger. Carmen trembled at the memory. That's why I decided to record everything. If something happened to me, at least there would be evidence. I realized that Carmen had risked her own safety to protect me. My 20-year-old granddaughter had shown more courage and loyalty than my 40-year-old son. Where is Ted now? I asked. I don't know, but according to the last conversations I recorded, he and Vanessa were planning to go back to the county clerk's office today with corrected documents. Carmen checked the time on her phone. He's probably already found out that you put an alert on your property. Then he's going to be furious, Carol murmured. More than furious. He's going to be desperate. Carmen looked at me with concern. Grandma, I think you should stay at Carol's house tonight. I don't think it's safe for you to be here alone. She was right. With all the evidence Carmen had collected, Ted was no longer just an ungrateful son. He was a cornered criminal, and cornered criminals can be unpredictable. All right, I agreed. But tomorrow, we're going to end this once and for all. What do you have in mind? Carol asked. We're going to confront him. With all the evidence, with witnesses, and with the police, if necessary. I felt a new determination coursing through my veins. Ted is going to learn that his mother is not the helpless victim he thought she was. Carmen smiled for the first time since she had arrived. Grandma, I don't think Dad knows who he's messing with. That night, the three of us stayed at Carol's house, planning how to confront Ted. We didn't know that he was already planning his next move, or that he was more desperate than we could imagine. But for the first time in years, I wasn't alone. I had allies, I had evidence, and I had a determination that even I didn't know I possessed. The war against my own son was about to reach its climax. The next morning dawned gray and cold, as if the sky knew a storm was coming. Carmen, Carol, and I had decided it was time to confront Ted with all the evidence we had. But he beat us to it. At 8 o'clock in the morning, while we were having breakfast at Carol's, we heard violent pounding on the front door. It wasn't the normal knock of a visitor. It was furious, desperate pounding from someone losing control. "Open this door. I know you're in there." Ted's voice was distorted, full of rage and desperation. Carmen turned pale. "I didn't know he knew I was here. He must have seen my car," Carol murmured, carefully peeking out the window. The pounding continued, growing more violent. "Carmen, get out here right now. And you nosy old busybody, stop manipulating my family." "I'm calling the police," Carol said, pulling out her phone. "Wait," I stopped her. "Let's confront him. But carefully. Are you crazy, Rose? He's completely out of control." "Exactly. When people are desperate, they make mistakes. And we need him to make mistakes." I took a deep breath, trying to find my courage. Besides, Carmen has recordings. If he says anything incriminating now, it will be additional evidence. Carmen activated her phone's recorder without a word. The pounding suddenly stopped, and for a moment we thought he had left. But then we heard the sound of shattering glass. "He's breaking my window," Carol whispered in terror. "Ted, stop!" I shouted toward the door. "We're opening it. Don't destroy Carol's house." "Then open up." Carol opened the door on the security chain, leaving only a small gap. Ted looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes were wrinkled as if he'd slept in them, and his hands were trembling. "Take this chain off and let me in." "Not until you calm down," Carol replied firmly. "You're acting like a lunatic." "I'm acting like someone who's sick of his family being manipulated." Ted tried to push the door, but the chain held it in place. "Carmen, get out here. This woman is filling your head with lies about me." "Dad, nobody is manipulating me," Carmen answered, her voice trembling but firm. "I've seen with my own eyes what you've been doing." "What have you seen? What are you talking about?" "I've seen you forging documents. I've seen you planning to steal Grandma's house. I've recorded your conversations with Vanessa." Carmen moved closer to the door, keeping her distance. "I know everything, Dad." The silence that followed was deafening. Through the gap, we could see Ted's face change from rage to shock, and then to something resembling panic. "You don't know what you're talking about," he mumbled, but his voice had lost all its strength. "I know you owe loan sharks $30,000. I know you've been spending the money you steal from Grandma on casinos and trips with Vanessa. I know you were planning to have her declared mentally incompetent." Carmen kept speaking with a calmness that filled me with pride. "And I know that last night you abandoned her on a highway so you could steal her documents." That's a lie." "I have recordings of everything, Dad. Your own voice admitting to every one of these crimes." Ted began to pace back and forth in front of the door like a caged animal. We could hear his ragged breathing from inside the house. "Carmen, sweetie, you have to understand. Everything I did was for us, for our family. Abandoning your own mother in the middle of nowhere was for our family. She's impossible. She's a stubborn old woman who refuses to see reality." The rage returned to his voice. "That house is mine by right. I'm her only son. That house is hers because she paid for it with her work and her suffering," I interjected, moving closer to the door. "You have no right to anything until I die." "Exactly. Until you die. And you know what? At this rate, you're going to die without a cent because you're too selfish to secure your own family's future." "Ted, listen to yourself," Carol said. "You're talking about your mother's death as if it's something you're looking forward to. That's not it. It's just. Ted stopped, realizing what he'd just said. "I didn't mean that." "Yes, you did," I murmured with infinite sadness. "You've been waiting for me to die to get my things. And since I'm taking too long, you decided to speed up the process." "No, Mom, that's not true." "Then give me back my documents." "I don't have your documents." "We have video of you leaving my house with a box full of papers," Carol cut in, "and the county clerk confirmed you tried to forge Rose's signature this very week." Ted was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, colder, more calculating. "Fine. Yes, I have the documents. But I'm not giving them back until Mom comes to her senses." "What do you mean, comes to her senses?" "I mean she signs over the house voluntarily, or things are going to get very difficult for her." "Are you threatening me?" I asked, feeling my blood run cold. "I'm telling you the reality. Without those documents, you can't prove the house is yours. And with the debts I have, I can't wait any longer." "What debts?" Carmen asked, though we already knew the answer. I owe money to people who don't understand excuses. If I don't pay them soon, they're going to come after the whole family. Do you understand that, Carmen? You're in danger too because of your grandmother's stubbornness. Carmen looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. Dad, how did you get to this point? How did you become this person? I became someone who does what he has to do to survive. And if you all don't help me, we're all going to suffer the consequences. Ted, I said with all the dignity I could muster, I'm going to tell you this one last time. I am not giving you my house. I don't care who you owe money to. I don't care what threats you make. That house is mine, and it's going to stay mine. Then you'll be responsible for what happens next. No, Ted, you will be responsible. Because you were the one who decided to gamble money you didn't have. You were the one who decided to steal from your own mother. And you were the one who decided to become a criminal. Ted moved closer to the door and lowered his voice to a menacing whisper. Mom, you have no idea who you're messing with. Give me Carmen and sign the papers. Or you're going to find out what I'm capable of. I already found out what you're capable of when you abandoned me on that highway. I shot back. And you know what, son? It didn't surprise me as much as I thought it would. Deep down, I think I always knew you were capable of betraying me. Shut up. I will not shut up. For the first time in years, I'm going to speak the truth. You are a selfish, manipulative, and cruel man. You've spent your entire adult life taking advantage of me, and when I finally said no, you decided to completely destroy me. I said, shut up, and I'm telling you that you don't scare me anymore. I yelled with a force I didn't know I had. I'm no longer the scared widow who lets you manipulate her. Now I'm a woman who is going to fight for what is hers. The silence that followed was absolute. Then we heard footsteps hurrying away. He's gone, Carol murmured, looking out the window. Not for long, Carmen said with worry. When Dad feels cornered, he becomes unpredictable. Then we'll make sure he doesn't have any more chances to hurt us, I decided. It's time to end this, once and for all. After the confrontation with Ted, the three of us knew there was no turning back. It was time to use all the evidence we had collected and end this nightmare once and for all. Carmen contacted Officer Davies and explained that we had crucial additional evidence for the case. He scheduled a meeting with us that same afternoon at the police station. When we arrived, Davies greeted us with professional seriousness, but I could see in his eyes that he was genuinely concerned for our safety. Mrs. Miller, after you filed the report yesterday, we started investigating your son. What we found is much worse than we imagined. Davies had us sit in a private office. Ted Miller has a prior criminal record for fraud that you were unaware of. A record? I asked in shock. What are you talking about? 5 years ago, he was arrested for forging documents to obtain a loan. The charges were dropped because the victim decided not to prosecute. Davies checked a file. The victim was an elderly woman, a widow, in a situation very similar to yours. Carmen covered her mouth in horror. Dad has done this before? It appears so. And according to our investigations, his current debts are the result of compulsive gambling. Mrs. Miller, your son is an experienced con artist. You are not his first victim. But I'm his mother, I murmured, feeling the world crumble around me. That's precisely what makes him more dangerous. He knows exactly your weak points and how to manipulate you. Davies leaned forward. Now, Carmen told me you have additional evidence. Carmen took out her folder and began to show him all the recordings, photographs, and documents she had collected. Davies reviewed each piece of evidence with professional attention, taking constant notes. This is extraordinary, he murmured, after listening to the recordings. We have clear confessions of attempted fraud, conspiracy, and threats. With this, we can arrest him immediately. What about my documents? I asked. He still has them. We will obtain a search warrant for his home and his car. We'll recover your documents and any other evidence. Davies stood up from his desk. But I need you all to understand something. Given Ted's debts and the threats he's made, we consider you to be in real danger. We recommend that you do not stay alone until we have him in custody. We left the police station with mixed feelings. On one hand, justice was finally on the right side. On the other, The reality that my own son was an experienced criminal was hitting me like seismic waves. "Grandma, are you okay?" Carmen asked as we walked to Carol's car. "I don't know how to feel," I admitted. For years, I thought I was failing as a mother because Ted had problems. Now I realize that he chose to be who he is. "It's not your fault," Carol said firmly. "Parents can give love and values, but in the end, each person decides what to do with their life." When we got back to Carol's house, we found a surprise waiting for us. Vanessa was standing on the porch, but she looked completely different. She was no longer the confident, manipulative woman I had met. She looked frightened, nervous, and clearly desperate. "Mrs. Miller, I need to talk to you," she said as she saw us approach. "Where's Ted?" Carmen asked with suspicion. "I don't know. He disappeared after you confronted him this morning. But before he left, he said terrible things to me." Vanessa wrung her hands nervously. "Mrs. Miller, I didn't know things had gone this far." "What do you mean?" Carol asked, clearly not trusting her. "When Ted told me about the plan to get the house, he said you had agreed to it. He told me you just needed help with the paperwork because you couldn't handle those things anymore." Vanessa started to cry. "He never told me he was going to abandon you on a highway. He never told me he was going to steal documents." "And you really expect us to believe that?" Carmen asked sarcastically. "It's the truth. When I found out what he really did last night, I told him he was crazy. I told him I couldn't be with someone capable of abandoning his own mother." Vanessa wiped her tears. "But then he showed me his true colors." "What did he do?" I asked, though I feared the answer. "He threatened me. He told me if I left him or told anyone the truth, the same thing would happen to me that happened to you." Vanessa trembled visibly. "Mrs. Miller, I'm scared. Ted is not the person I thought he was." Carol and I exchanged glances. Was it possible Vanessa was telling the truth? Or was this another of Ted's manipulations? "Why are you coming to us with this now?" Carol asked. "Because this morning, after he came back from confronting you, he got a phone call that drove him insane. Someone was demanding money immediately, threatening to hurt his family if he didn't pay." Vanessa looked at us pleadingly. "When he hung up, he told me he was going to get the money no matter what. And then he looked at me in a way that terrified me." "What do you mean?" "He told me that if he couldn't get the house, he'd have to find another way to get money fast. He asked me how much I thought an old woman's organs were worth." Vanessa covered her face with her hands. When I asked him if he was serious, he just smiled that horrible smile. My blood ran cold. "Are you saying that Ted is planning to—" "I don't know. But after that conversation, he took a gun he had hidden and left. He told me not to come back to his apartment and to forget I ever knew him." Carmen quickly approached Vanessa. "Where did he get that gun? How long has he had it?" "I don't know. I'd never seen it before. But when he picked it up, he looked like he knew exactly how to use it." Carol was already dialing Officer Davies. "We need to call the police immediately." While Carol was on the phone, I sat down heavily on the porch step. The situation had escalated beyond anything I could have imagined. My son was not only a thief and a con artist, but now he was armed and desperate. "Grandma, we're going to protect you," Carmen said, hugging me tightly. "We're not going to let him hurt you." "It's not just about me," I murmured. "If Ted is as desperate as Vanessa says, any of us could be in danger." Officer Davies arrived in less than 20 minutes, with 2 more patrol cars. After questioning Vanessa for an hour, he confirmed our worst fears. "Based on Vanessa's testimony and our investigation into Ted's debts, we consider him an immediate danger to you," Davies explained. "We're placing a police watch on this house and intensifying the search." "What if you don't find him soon?" Carmen asked. "We will find him. But in the meantime, I need you all to be prepared for anything." Davies looked at us gravely. "If Ted shows up, do not try to confront him on your own. Call the police immediately." That night, as we waited for news under police protection, I couldn't help but think of the baby Ted had been, of the sweet boy who used to cuddle with me during thunderstorms, of the teenager who promised he would always take care of me. When had that boy turned into the monster who was now threatening my life? But more importantly, would I have the strength to face him when he finally appeared? I didn't know the answer would come much sooner than I expected. And I didn't know that when the time came, I would discover an inner strength I never knew I possessed. The final storm was about to begin. The early morning of the third day arrived with a deceptive quiet. I had been sleeping restlessly on Carol's sofa when the sound of shattering glass jolted me awake. It wasn't Carol's house, it was my house, next door. "Did you hear that?" I whispered in the darkness. Carol was already awake, peering through the window. "It's your house, Rose. Someone's inside." Carmen got up silently and called the officer who was watching outside. But when we looked toward the patrol car, it was empty. "Where's the cop?" Carmen murmured in terror. "I don't know, but we can't wait." Carol was already dialing 911. "Rose, Ted is in your house." Through the window, we could see lights moving inside my home. They weren't normal lights, but the erratic beam of a flashlight searching for something specific. "He's going to destroy everything if he doesn't find what he's looking for," I murmured. "What could he be looking for?" "He already took all your important documents," Carmen said. "Not all of them. There's something he doesn't know I have." I rose from the sofa with determination. "His father's will is hidden in a place he'll never find." "What will?" Carol and Carmen asked at the same time. "Your grandfather made a secret will before he died. A will that leaves everything specifically to me and explicitly excludes Ted because of his behavior." I took a deep breath. If Ted finds and destroys that document, he could legally claim an inheritance. "Why did you never tell us that?" Carmen asked. "Because I hoped I would never have to use it. Because I hoped Ted would change." I looked toward my house, where the lights were still moving frantically, but I can't keep waiting anymore. Carol hung up the phone. "The police are on their way, but they'll be at least 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, he can find the will and destroy it. Or worse." I walked to the door. "I'm going to confront him." "Rose, no. He's armed and desperate. That's exactly why I have to stop him now." I put on my late husband's coat, the same one I had worn the night Ted abandoned me. "It's my house. They're my documents. And he's my son. This ends now. If you go, we go with you," Carmen said firmly. "No, it's too dangerous. Grandma, you're not the lonely, scared woman from 3 days ago. But you don't have to face this alone either." Carmen took my hand. "We're family. We go together." We slipped silently out of Carol's house and crossed into my yard. The lights inside the house were now moving toward the master bedroom. Ted was looking in the right place. "I'll go in through the front door," I whispered. "You two stay here, and if anything goes wrong, run." "No," Carol murmured. "If you go in, we all go in. But we'll be smart about it." I opened the front door with my key, trying not to make a sound. The noise of furniture being violently moved came from the bedroom. Ted was systematically destroying everything in his search. "I know it's in here," he yelled from the bedroom, apparently talking to himself. "The old man had to have left something that gives me rights." I walked slowly down the hallway toward my bedroom, with Carol and Carmen following at a distance. When I reached the doorway, I saw Ted kneeling beside my bed, pulling books from the nightstand and throwing them violently to the floor. "Ted," I said in a firm voice. He whipped around to face me like a wild animal. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair disheveled, his clothes dirty. In his right hand, he held the gun Vanessa had mentioned. "Mom." "Perfect. Now you're going to tell me where Dad's will is." "What will?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "Don't lie to me. I know Dad made a will. Vanessa told me Carmen mentioned something about documents I didn't know existed." Ted stood up, pointing the gun at me. "Tell me where it is, or I swear I'll—" "Or you'll what? You'll kill your own mother?" I took a step toward him. "Is that what you've become, Ted? Don't make me do this. Just tell me where the damned will is." "It's in the safe deposit box at the bank," I lied deliberately. "A box that only I can open." "Liar, if it were at the bank, you would have already used it against me." Ted waved the gun nervously. "It's here, in this house, and I'm going to find it even if I have to tear down every wall." "Ted, listen to me." I changed my tone to something softer, more maternal. "Look at what you've become. You're threatening your own mother with a gun over money. It's not about money. It's about survival. They're going to kill me if I don't pay them." Tears began to stream down his cheeks. And you could save me, but you'd rather watch them destroy me. Ted, son, listen to me carefully. I took another step. There is a will. And yes, it excludes you completely. His face transformed into a mask of shock and betrayal. What? Your father knew exactly what kind of person you were. He saw you steal money from my purse when you were 15. He saw you lie about your grades. He saw you manipulate me and take advantage of me. Every word was like a knife, but I needed to speak the truth. He made that will to protect me from you. No, that's a lie. The will specifically states that if anything happens to me, the entire inheritance goes to Carmen. That you received nothing because you proved yourself unworthy of trust. I saw his legs begin to tremble. Do you know what else it says, Ted? Shut up. It says that if you ever threaten me or harm me, Carmen is to immediately turn it over to the authorities to ensure you are prosecuted for all your crimes. I smiled sadly. Your father knew you better than I wanted to admit. Ted collapsed to the floor, crying like the little boy he had been so many years ago. The gun fell from his trembling hands. It can't be, he sobbed. Dad couldn't have hated me that much. He didn't hate you, Ted, but he knew you. I knelt beside him, keeping my distance from the gun, and he knew that I loved you too much to protect myself from you. At that moment, we heard sirens approaching. The police had arrived. Grandma! Carmen appeared in the bedroom doorway. You're okay. I'm okay, my love. I looked at Ted, who was still sobbing on the floor. Everything is going to be okay. The police entered and arrested Ted without any resistance. As they led him away, he looked at me one last time. Forgive me, Mom? I forgive you, son. But that doesn't change the consequences of what you did. It was the last time I saw Ted as a free man. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison for fraud, theft, endangerment, and assault with a deadly weapon. 6 months later, I was sitting in my rebuilt garden, having tea with Carol and Carmen. My house had been repaired, my documents recovered, and my life had found a peace I hadn't known in years. Do you miss Dad? Carmen asked as she watered my new flowers. I miss the boy he was, but not the man he became. I took a sip of warm tea. Carmen, do you know what the most important lesson in all of this was? What, Grandma? That it's never too late to stand up for yourself. That it's never too late to say enough is enough. I looked at the golden sunset over my house, my garden, my rebuilt life. At 65 years old, I discovered that I am stronger than I ever imagined. Carmen sat beside me and took my wrinkled hand. Grandma, you are the bravest woman I know. I smiled, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face and the peace in my heart. For the first time in years, the future looked bright. Now this, I murmured to myself, is living.